the shadow in the kitchen. I'm not much of a writer, but I'll try to describe the events in a way that makes them a little clearer. I struggle to logically explain what happened to me that day, and to this day, the phenomenon of the shadow in the kitchen remains unexplainable. It was a shadow that glided from one wall to another, straight and long, lacking any distinct features that resembled a human silhouette. Despite the fact that this event took only a fraction of a second, I was left in a state of confusion. I can't remember if it was a weekend or if I was on vacation, but the fact remains that I woke up closer to noon. By that time, most of my family had already had breakfast. They were gathered in the living room chatting with my brother Jake and his family who were visiting. So there I was, all alone in the kitchen. It's difficult to explain the layout of the kitchen and hallway to make it clear that the shadow couldn't have possibly appeared there. There was no light coming from the hallway, and the space where the shadow could have emerged was limited by the door frame. My nephew had just run by, and if there was any lighting from the hallway, it would not have cast a shadow at that distance. The same went for the balcony. There was no one out there at the moment. There were no plants or trees that could create any movement outside the window. Besides, the balcony is situated quite high, and anything outside couldn't cast a shadow on the kitchen floor. The balcony window and the kitchen window weren't even open, they were covered by curtains. So where could the shadow have come from? I stood sideways to the window, peering into the open fridge as I fished out a couple of eggs, breaking one before I was startled by that shadow gliding somewhere within arm's reach. I caught it with my peripheral vision. It passed quickly and silently like a glitch in a television screen, a gray vertical strip. That's what I thought after everything was over. I didn't feel an overwhelming sense of dread, rather I was struck with a lingering sense of perplexity about what I had just witnessed. That day I reassured myself that it must have been a trick of my mind, but over time, recalling the incident, it became increasingly challenging to accept that explanation. As time went on, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something had irrevocably changed in the kitchen. Every time I walked past that particular spot, a knot of unease would form in my stomach. It felt like something or someone was watching me. There were no sounds, no motions, just an oppressive silence that seemed to absorb the sound of my footsteps. While I tried to prepare dinner, I found myself lost in thoughts about work and plans for the day. But reality interrupted me once again. At the moment I leaned over the counter to chop vegetables, I felt a cold breeze cutting through the kitchen. It was so strong that it made the curtains flutter, as if an invisible hand was trying to grasp them. I looked up, and there it was again, a shadow dancing at the edge of my vision. This time it was clearer and more defined than before, as if it were composed of solid black smoke seeping into the surrounding objects. With every passing moment, I felt its power growing within the room. I wanted to scream, but the sounds got stuck in my throat, as if the shadow had claimed them. I jumped back and dashed to the light switch. In an instant, the bright light flooded the kitchen, but the shadows vanished, leaving behind a chilling feeling and a rush of adrenaline. I struggled to breathe, overcome with a sense that the world I knew had shifted forever. It was as if the very fabric of my reality had been altered, sewn with threads of dread and uncertainty. That evening, when the house filled with laughter and chatter, my unease subsided somewhat, but I couldn't escape the feeling that this was something truly sinister. After everyone had left and I was alone again, silence fell over the home, heavy and suffocating. I decided to put the kids to bed. As I hugged them goodnight, a wave of panic washed over me, like the shadows were waiting for me in the kitchen, watching my every move. Unable to shake the fear, I called my husband. His voice was a lifeline, and though he tried to calm me, I still felt an overwhelming need for his presence. "It's all okay. Everything is fine. Just relax," he reassured me from the other end. But how could I relax when shadows continued to flit across my mind, invading my thoughts? Every night after that encounter, I heard whispers and faint sounds that hinted at my solitude, a foreboding reminder that I wasn't alone. The shadows persisted, weaving in and out of my memories, and even with the passage of time, they never truly left. In one of those excruciating nights, I decided to leave some items on the kitchen counter to see if the shadows would reveal themselves once again. I arranged a few candles and sat on a stool, gazing at the objects on the table that seemed to mock my fear. No terror this time, only a determination to understand what was happening. And then I saw her again. This time, the shadow became more pronounced, more tangible, as if it had waited, lurking in the corners of my home. It shaped itself into a dark cloud gliding through the air, and with each movement, the chilling sensation of its presence intensified. I could feel my hair standing on end, sensing that this was no longer just a figment of my imagination. "Please, just my imagination," I whispered. My heart raced as the darkness enveloped the room. I suddenly realized that this was something much bigger than I had previously believed. This was not just a shadow. It was an echo of fears accumulated within the walls of my kitchen. Memories of times that were once filled with laughter and joy. Now it was a space tainted with something sinister, sealed in our home. That night, my world changed forever. The shadows continued to dance through my memories, becoming a new form of fear that gripped my heart with every flicker of light. No longer could I dismiss them as mere illusions of my mind, for they had become a haunting presence that transcended my understanding. I shared everything with my husband. At first he laughed, teasing me about my wild imagination, but as I insisted on the persistence of my fears, he became more serious. "Honey, I may not believe in this stuff, but if you truly feel something is wrong, why don't we call in a specialist?" His expression revealed an unsettling mix of humor and concern. We summoned a paranormal investigator to our home. I compiled all my notes, writing down my thoughts, and when he arrived, I saw interest and seriousness in his eyes. We talked, and he asked numerous questions about how I felt. Then, gathering every ounce of courage, I recounted my experiences, the shadows that had come and gone, beginning from that fateful morning. He listened intently, nodding along, yet I couldn't shake the slight smile that crossed his face when I finished. He surveyed the kitchen as if preparing to listen closely for something hidden. "I can't guarantee I'll find what we're looking for," he began, "but I will certainly try." He pulled out a device that resembled a ghost hunting tool, and his work seemed like something out of an old movie. He entered the kitchen and began recording. I stood nearby, filled with expectation, as the shadow appeared once more. This time it manifested vividly, as if it had long been aware of our search. In that moment, I understood it was more than just an image in my mind. It was something real and profound. The investigator froze. His eyes widened, and at last he spoke. "Do you feel that? It's here." In that instant, my heart sank, realizing what I had feared all along. This was no mere illusion. It was a presence that had been lurking, waiting in the dark. The shadows that danced across my kitchen were the manifestations of my own fears, reminding me of the darkness that hovered in the corners of our life. They were not just figments of my imagination, but echoes from a time long past, imprints left from the joy and laughter that once filled our home. From that day forward, my life was never the same. The shadows prowled within my reminiscences, and no matter how much I tried to outrun them, they would always find me, looming in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to return. Every breath became a struggle, every transition through the kitchen a test of courage, as if the shadows gathered, awaiting their moment to strike once again. And so I continued to live, trying to leave behind all that dwelled in the darkness, hoping that one day the shadows would finally let me go. The storm allowed me to share with you a creepy and unusual story that happened to my mom in her childhood. This memory continues to haunt her, despite the fact that more than 40 years have passed since then. Once upon a summer in a remote corner of Texas, there was a small village called Cedar Valley. My mom, then just a little girl, would visit her kind Aunt Edna every summer. Aunt Edna was a woman who always had her hands full, whether in the garden or taking care of the house. She grew flowers, tended to chickens, and sometimes made jam from wild berries picked in the early morning. My mom would wholeheartedly help her aunt, but deep down, there remained a desire for childhood fun. She wanted to run through the fields, be friends with the neighboring kids, and of course, pick mushrooms. Their neighbors were Emily and her brother Jake. Emily was a caring and quiet girl, while Jake was brave and a bit mischievous. They were the best of friends, and on one of those sunny summer days, Emily decided to take Jake into the woods. Their mother, like Emily's grandmother, warned the children about the dangers lurking in the world. But Emily, filled with youthful audacity, merely laughed it off and ventured into the woods with her brother, armed only with a basket for mushrooms. "We'll be back home before the sky darkens," she assured. But neither she nor Jake suspected how difficult it would be. As soon as they entered the woods, the air grew heavy, and the shadows from the trees began to thicken, swallowing the last rays of light. They gathered mushrooms, engrossed in their freedom and fun, laughing and encouraging each other. Each time they found a mushroom, it seemed as if the forest was answering them, whispering in a strange language. Soon the sky began to darken, as if an invisible force had covered it with a black curtain. Jake, sensing the change, became uneasy and said, "Emily, I don't like how this looks. Let's go back home." But Emily, full of excitement, reassured him, "Everything will be fine. Let's play a little longer." She immersed herself back into the joyful gathering of mushrooms. The first loud thunderclap sounded, as if a heavenly guardian decided to warn them of impending danger. But the girl paid no attention. A low rumble gradually intensified, like the sound of a great beast waking from a long slumber. Suddenly, a deafening crack of thunder erupted, and Jake screamed in fear as the clouds thickened and the light from the flashes danced across the pale landscape. Emily pulled her brother close, yet their attempts to escape soon proved futile. "We have to get home," she screamed, but the rain poured down, mingling with lightning, presenting them with only one thing: fear, as if the forest itself hated them and wanted to swallow them whole. But in the very moments of rising panic, a deafening crack of lightning seemed to tear the very fabric of space apart. Everything around them was blinded by bright light, and in that instant something unseen struck Jake and Emily, knocking them to the ground. The girl instinctively shielded her brother with her body, desperately trying to protect him from the relentless wrath of the storm. And in that moment, the world around them plunged into chaos. The grief was unimaginable for their family. My mom, still a child, was present at the funeral and felt how the sorrow engulfed everyone. She watched as Emily and Jake's parents seemed to turn to stone from their loss. Emily's grandmother, having lost everything, struggled for a long time to come to terms with it, wrapping herself in the endless weight of her memories. To avoid the pain, my mom, like all the villagers, tried not to think about that day. As the battles within her raged on, my mom etched this horror into her memory. Since then, she was terrified of thunderstorms, lightning, and whenever it rained, she would try to keep us inside. Years later, my mom gathered all her strength to return with us to her hometown, to Cedar Valley. Her heart trembled with mixed feelings. Fear and the desire to finally look back at the overwhelming suffering that once haunted her. We wandered through the deserted yards where joy once flourished. The overgrown trees, like old friends, wrapped themselves in their foliage, and wildflowers swayed just a few steps away from the forgotten swings which once rang with delight. I stumbled upon a couple of children's toys, a rusty car and a chipped board, buried in the ground. My mom gently caressed them, and her face twisted with memories. She led us to the village cemetery to visit Emily and Jake, whom she still remembered. These memories were not mere shadows, but vivid experiences capable of stirring emotions within her heart. At the cemetery, beneath the drooping sky, as we walked among the graves, my mom paused at one and knelt down to leave flowers. There she recalled the horrifying tragedy as if trying to reach out to their spirits. My brother and I left our toys on the grave as a sign that we still remembered them. As we left the cemetery, an old woman appeared, dragging a basket full of mushrooms from the pine forest. She had fragile hands, and her face seemed weathered like a testament to time. My mom sighed in relief and said, "Hey, kids, let's gather some chanterelles." The old woman stopped and spoke in a husky voice. "Don't linger, girls, a storm is coming." Confident in her words, my mom waved it off, declaring that the sky was clear and calm. But the old woman lifted a finger, pointing at the darkening clouds. "I saw Emily in the field. It's a storm coming," she said, then shuffled back towards the village. My mom shuddered and took us by the hands, her expression growing serious and concerned. We walked down the road, and the shadow of the old woman lingered in our minds like a warning. As we approached the village, the sky grew dark once again, and something ominous loomed above us like a foreboding omen. Time seemed to slow, and my heart raced. A salty bead of sweat trickled down my forehead as thick darkness surrounded us. I looked at my mom and saw fear in her eyes, as if she too felt the anxiety of past troubles. That evening, when we were almost home, the storm unleashed its fury. Thunder roared like the deceptive growl of a massive beast. and the cacophony of whispers surrounded us amidst nature's chaos. Terrified shadows engulfed all the light, leaving us trapped in search of shelter. When everything around us rumbled and lightning struck the ground, oh, how terrifying it was. In every flash of light, I saw the shadows of Emily and Jake, ghosts of that fateful night. The cries of panic surged within my heart, and the memory of the past wouldn't let go. My mom held us tight, her heart beating in sync with the thunder. In that moment, as the world shook and the first spark appeared, she whispered, we must remember them." No matter how difficult it was, within this fear thrived love. A memory of those who remained forever in the realm of the forest, with whom we would never forget the sharpness of our experiences, even amid our fear of nature's wrath. Every step felt like an invitation to the darkness, but the feeling of love became our sole anchor. We had to remember and never forget who we are.